Hi everyone, this is teacher Nabukenya Ida from Trinity College Nabingo. We are linking up from where we ended on King Solomon, and today we shall look at his failures or the weaknesses of King Solomon, the third king of Israel. And I want you to go and open your Bible in the book of 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1 to 13. When you read that text, you'll find there are some weaknesses of King Solomon. And the first one that we see Solomon failing as the wisest king of Israel, he forced the people of Israel to provide labor when he was building his temple and his palace. This was a weakness. Solomon overtaxed the people of Israel to raise the funds to build the temple, and this was uncalled for as a king of Israel, hence failing. During the building of the temple, Solomon was so extravagant, and this extravagance showed him as a weak king. You'll go in your Bible in 1 Kings and you read about the dedication of the temple and you see how extravagant the king of Israel was. He led to national debt when he borrowed a lot of money from Hiram of Tyre to build the Jerusalem temple. We are also seeing Solomon failing as a king when he sold 20 towns to King Hiram of Tyre. The land of Israel belonged to God, so no foreigner was supposed to own it. Selling it was a weakness to the king. Solomon's marriage to foreign wives, it was a weakness. He married women from Tyre, Sidon, Moab, yet God had forbidden the Israelites from intermarrying with other nations. This was a weakness. We are seeing Solomon introducing idol worship in the land of Israel due to the influence from his foreign wives. Yet as a king of Israel, he was supposed to promote the worship of one God and following of the covenant way of life. The marriage that Solomon was involved in was polygamous. He married 700 wives, 300 concubines, and this was a weakness. An ideal king of Israel was supposed to marry only one wife. So having many of them was a weakness to the king. We are seeing Solomon getting involved in the murder. He killed Adonijah, he killed Joab, the military commander of his father David. Adonijah was his brother. They shared the same father, but when Adonijah tried to make himself king, he put a lot of resistance. Then Solomon ended up killing him. That was a weakness. As a king, he was supposed to show mercy to all his subjects. Solomon's disrespect of his father's advice. When he married so many women, he overtaxed the people, and then he even worshipped Baal. We have seen Molech and Astarte. Was a weakness of Solomon because his father David had instructed him to serve only one God, faithfully obey him, depend on him, and love him. Solomon, we are seeing him failing also when he cheated King Hiram of Tyre. He gave him a wasteland, yet Hiram had provided almost all the building materials that Solomon needed for the building of the temple and also his palace. So cheating was a weakness that Solomon exhibited towards Hiram of Tyre. Solomon was weak when he discriminated against the people of the north, which later led to the division of Israel into two kingdoms. His father David had tried to unite all the 12 tribes, but as Solomon comes into power, he divides these people, discriminates against them, forces them into forced labor, overtaxes them, and even marginalizes them in his administration. This was very bad as a king of Israel. When you read that chapter, 1 Kings chapter 11, you'll find there are more weaknesses. So please add them on what we have discussed. Let us look at how Solomon, the third king of Israel, reaped from what his father David sowed. Everything this heading shows us that most of the things that Solomon did as king of Israel, he did it basing on the foundation that his father David had already put in place. This question wants us to show the extent at which Solomon reaped from David and another extent. But to a large extent, according to Bible facts, Solomon largely, to a larger extent, to a bigger extent, reaped from what David had sown. One, let us look at the building of the temple. Solomon built the temple of Jerusalem, but his father David had already planned to build a temple for God. Not until when David was stopped by God through the prophecy of prophet Nathan. So, building of the temple, that showed him reaping from what his father David had already sown. The transfer of the covenant in the Jerusalem temple by Solomon and also dedicating the temple was an attribute to David. David brought the covenant box from Bala, from Obed-Edom's home to Jerusalem and put it in a tent. So when Solomon built the temple, he put it into the temple that was already planned by David. Solomon's achievement of being God-fearing man or king, this is also attributed to David because David, in his last instructions, told Solomon to serve God faithfully, to love him, and to depend on God. Solomon inherited that well-equipped army which was headed by Joab. The army was equipped and administered properly by his father David. It was loyal. So when he came in as king of Israel, the army loved him, served him, and helped him to go and fight his enemies. So this army is just an inheritance, which shows that Solomon reaped from what his father David had sown. The benefits of the trading markets that Solomon enjoyed. The trading markets were already established by David, his father, with Tyre and Egypt. So he found out a smoothly run market economy. We are seeing Solomon achieving as an author of Psalms, of Proverbs, which is also attributed to David. David was a good musician. We saw him singing for the king, that was King Saul. When he ran mad, he played all different musical instruments. So Solomon, having such a talent, he inherited it from his father David. Talk about the diplomatic relations that Solomon enjoyed, which were established by his father David. The neighboring countries like Tyre were at peace with Israel. So Solomon as king just enjoyed this. The decentralization of power that Solomon maintained, it was started by his father David, which helped him to improve on his management and maintenance of Israel as a kingdom. He borrowed his father's idea of promoting and maintaining peace plus justice in the kingdom. Remember, David united all the 12 tribes of Israel, and this helped Solomon to rule peacefully. So, becoming king, also, we are seeing King David promising Bathsheba that your son will be my heir. He will succeed me as king. And to fulfill that promise, David made Solomon king of Israel. But we cannot largely see that everything that Solomon did depended on David. Also, some effort was made by Solomon to see that also the kingdom of Israel prospers. And these, we are having a few of them, and I urge you that you go and read about this. You'll read the book of the promise, you read Understanding the Old Testament Times, you read another book called God and His People. You'll see the effort that Solomon put in to see that the kingdom of Israel became famous and also developed. When God asked Solomon, what should I do? Solomon asked for wisdom, and asking for wisdom is not attributed to David. It was an effort done by King Solomon. We are seeing Solomon coming up with a plan of exporting mineral deposits in the kingdom of Israel. This was not done by David, but Solomon, as a king, also negotiated this and put it in plan so that Israel developed. The construction of cities like Hazor by Solomon, it was a personal initiative which David did not say. Therefore, Solomon, to a small extent, did not reap what his father David had sown. We are saying we are seeing Solomon's personality. Solomon was handsome, attractive, so he could sing, he could talk well with people, he was wise. All this attracted so many visitors to the kingdom of Israel. Let's give an example of the queen of Sheba from Ethiopia, who came to see the wise king of Israel. That was also a personal attribute to King Solomon. Solomon also encouraged the cultural development and civilization in the kingdom of Israel. He promoted that culture. He wrote about Israel. When you read the Songs of Songs, when you read the book of Ecclesiastes, you'll find all this. When you read the Proverbs, you'll see Solomon doing this, hence showing that he also had some personal effort to see that Israel became a well-developed nation. Having said all that, let us look at this assignment question that we shall do in our free time, we shall discuss when we read those reference books that I've given you. Assess the greatness of King Solomon in the history of Israel. Assess the greatness. What does the term assess mean? Before you attempt this question, find out what does the examiner require from you. Discuss with a friend, discuss with any person who is near you, but don't forget to read your Bible to find out the answers that regards this. For more information, dear viewers, please visit www.recona.sc.ug/e-library. There you'll find more information on this subtopic that we are talking about. Write this question such that when we meet in the contact classes, we shall discuss all this. Don't forget to pray, to observe the SOPs, sanitizing, staying at home, reading your Bible, and above all, put God first. Be blessed. I'm Nabukenya Ida from Trinity College Nabingo, and bye for now.